Scrabble. Here we go. There are words not to be used in Scrabble, presumably in polite company. The word culchi could be among a number of terms to be banned from official Scrabble competitions. Bosses are discussing banning a number of terms which could be described as hate speech. So, culchi, of course, pejorative term for someone from rural Ireland. Let's talk to John Ryan, Secretary of the All Ireland Scrabble Association. Hi, John.
Thanks very much for having me on.
Not at all. And presumably the frowning on certain words, homophobic words, racist words, anti-Semitic words and things like that is for official competitions. Because I suppose in company and houses, a word exists or it doesn't exist, no matter, what its meaning is. So tell me the thinking.
Well, I suppose from a purist point of view, there is a Scrabble dictionary we use. There's about 190,000 words in it. And so a purist Scrabble player will just say it's a list of words and they have no meaning at all whatsoever. But of course, you and I know that differently, and actually our jobs, words mean everything. I'm a senior library assistant, you're a radio producer, and words mean everything, and the use of them means everything. So really, it would be my opinion, I suppose, that whether it's in public or private, there are words that are just unacceptable to use nowadays.
Yeah, so what's the official thinking as when it comes to the use of these words in competition? And I think you've made your feelings, about using them even in private, that in good company you shouldn't actually use pejorative words. But in competition, it's far more acute, I'd say.
Well, yes, in competition, certainly at the higher levels, players, they just learn words. They learn lists and lists and lists of words, and they don't necessarily, ascribe the meaning to them. But of course, just like this conversation today on the radio and all across the internet, when we are talking about the words, it actually brings the game of Scrabble into the spotlight. And for anybody, and particularly for young people, we were trying to encourage young people to play Scrabble. To think that the words are allowed, just isn't really acceptable. I suppose it's a tough decision, and there's both sides of the argument. One side is we want all the words, and if we start banning them, it's a slippery slope. Where do we stop? And of course, the other side is, well, actually, it's time to take action.
Yeah, because as I was saying, a word exists or it doesn't exist, and if it does exist, and it's a word game, well, saying you can't use it is, it takes away from the purest idea. However, you would imagine that in people, that they wouldn't use it themselves, even take advantage of having the letters for it, because it's such they're terrible words with awful connotations, and indeed in official competitions. But drawing the line, naughty words that you tell your children not to use, what can we say here in the radio? We could say a mild one and say feck.
Yeah.
Which for Father Ted.
And the other, and Irish people are actually great at using the F word and all the different variations of it, and they're all allowed in Scrabble. But we certainly, when we talk about drawing the line, I think it's, again, it's a tough one. For you, say, on the radio, if somebody came on the radio and started using the N-word and started using words like faggot and bum boy, you probably wouldn't have that person on the radio for very long, because it's obviously just unacceptable to use those words. And Scrabble should be no different. Really, we should be getting rid of these words that are offensive and can hurt people. If you think about in Ireland today in schools, 70% of LGBT students feel unsafe, and 80% of them experience bullying and harassment. So, we need to send a message, clearly that there are words that are no longer acceptable in today's society.
And what do your players think of the thinking on this?
Well, it's actually split. We actually haven't really had the debate in Ireland yet. The debate has just finished in the US, and it's in the US, the National Association in America, that have banned about 200 of the 190,000 words that are allowed. And across the rest of the world, I suppose the debate is just going to start now. And I think it's probably up to each country to maybe ban words, because, say, a word like culture in Ireland, people might like to use it, whereas, like, say, the N-word, for example, in Africa, maybe people use it, I don't know. So I think it's probably up to each country to decide themselves what words are, should be removed.
Right, and are there international competitions?
There
as
are,
well?
And we use...
And that could lead to a problem then of what's acceptable in one and not in the other.
Well, not really, because there's a book called the Scrabble Words. It was published in 2019. It's actually published every couple of years, and a committee of people get together and they take words out and they put new words in, that have come into use. So, 20 years ago, say 30 years ago in Ireland, nobody knew what the word pizza was, and 20 years ago, nobody knew the word email. So, words come in and out all the time. And there is a Collins Scrabble dictionary that's printed every 2 years, and that's used all across the world in all the international competitions. So,
right.
that would solve the problem of different people having different words.
Right. How do you manage, say, Ireland versus the United States, and they've got their colours, and they've got their labour, and they've got their programme? How do we manage?
Well, I suppose it's when in Rome. So if Irish players go across to the US to play, they would play using those words in that dictionary, and vice versa when US players come to UK, Ireland, Australia, Europe, Africa, they would use the other words. So I suppose, it's when in Rome as such. I suppose there probably at some stage will be a movement to have all of the Scrabble associations across the world using the one dictionary, but I'd say that's a little while off, yes.
Right, so we could COLOR and COLOUR is acceptable or whatever.
At the moment, both of them are acceptable, yes, because the Collins dictionary was based on Chambers, and Chambers being a US book, and the Merriam-Webster and the Oxford being the English book. So the book that we use at the moment, the Collins dictionary, has both.
Right. In fact, program is now used in two different senses. Computer programs end with just the one M, whereas radio program is the extra ME at the end.
Exactly, yeah. So again, that goes back to how, I suppose, language and words are constantly evolving, and the Scrabble world does, keep up, and every couple of years we do change, and like GRLL, hey girl, that's allowed now in Scrabble, whereas you'd be like, you'd be thinking, oh my God, that's just rubbish, but we just kind of, we try to move with the times as much as we can, but I suppose at the end of the day it's still a game of words, isn't it? Yeah,
and the tech speech then is in as well. How many members have you got, John?
In Ireland, we probably got about 50 or 60 active members, that come to their tournaments regularly. Well, I would say come to tournaments regularly. We've had 2 of our tournaments cancelled now this year so far. We're hoping to get back in action at the end of the year, but of course we'll have to wait and see what happens, like everything else. We might end up going digital in some shape or form if we can't get out to
right. Yeah. Well, very interesting, John. Thanks for the conversation this morning. It was really good.
Welcome.
Enjoyed that. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
That's John Ryan there, and John is Secretary of the All Ireland Scrabble Association. There was a variation on topics this morning. Very interesting from John.